Hey, hey, here I am. Can anybody hear me? Oh, yes, I can hear myself. So, what I guess I'm doing is to remove my headphones, otherwise, I won't be able to talk. The next thing I'm going to do, because hey, it's Friday night, so let's have a drink. Um, Cheers, guys. The thing is, I am based in Bangkok, Thailand, and right now there is a ban over alcohol for about 10 days now, and this goes towards making me want to drink because fuck them. Anyway, yeah, by the way, all previous lectures had no profanity in them, or not very many, so I'll try to make up for that as well. Okay, let me switch my view to this. And my talk now is crash course into the virtual office, intro to the virtual office, sorry. Um, First slide. Hey, go there. Yeah, first slide. Yeah, who am I? So I guess everybody here knows me more or less, or many do anyway. I've been in the game industry for about 23 years. First, I spent 8 years at Ubisoft in Paris, in France. And that was obviously a physical office back then. Then I spent 15 years here in Bangkok, Thailand, running Sanuk Games, the studio I founded in 2003. Sanuk Games did a number of small casual games on many platforms, consoles, PC, mobile, etc. And it worked for 15 years, but eventually it was no longer working, so I had to shut down last year. And after 1 year of basically slacking, I eventually got a job recently as the CEO of Zero Bit, which is another studio based in Bangkok, Thailand, which is not my studio this time. I'm just a hired CEO. And right now it is a virtual office by necessity, of course, because of COVID-19. Um, so, yeah, I started at Ubisoft in 1996. So I guess many people among the few who are listening to this are old farts like I am. But for those who are not, let me give you an insight of how things were back then. There was internet, I think, in the USA, but not really in Europe at the time. And Ubisoft had no internet anyway. The company was not connected to the internet. So we were working on different sites. I was in Paris and I was working with a programming team based in Bucharest in Romania. And the way we were communicating was we were exchanging files through BBS, bulletin board system, like servers that were in our respective offices that communicated through the analog phone lines. And we were, instead of writing emails, because we had no email back then, we wrote fax with fax machines. That's how I started my work life. It didn't last too long, though. By the next year, Ubisoft started being connected to the internet. There was no intranet either. It means that computers in the office were not connected through an Ethernet network. What we had to do when we worked on our computer, we saved our work on a floppy disk, a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and in turn we had to go to the reference computer, put our disk in and commit, and then get what the computer had for us from other programmers. So that's how we worked back then. So needless to say, at that time, there was no notion of virtual office or working from home. It would have made no fucking sense. Then I spent 8 years, I said, and in 2003, actually 2004, I came here in Thailand and I started Sanuk Games. There started being talks about virtual office, whether it would be possible or not, but really it wasn't a real thing. It wasn't a thing people would consider, and it was not a thing that I considered at the time. I know that Chris and Alan from BoomZap in 2005, which is just 1 year later, they started a virtual office in Singapore, and they were a precursor in that, and they were visionaries in a way, but I was not such a visionary. So I had no clue about starting a virtual office. I started a physical office. Another thing is that as a foreigner, in order to have the right to set up a business in Thailand, of which I would be the shareholder, I had to get permission from the Thailand Board of Investment. And it was unthinkable back then that the Board of Investment would allow me to invest into a virtual office, that they wouldn't understand what it is. Actually, not only that, but even the location of my physical office, they chose it for me. I did not have a choice of where in Bangkok I had to open my office. They had a government-sponsored building in some shithole suburb called Jangwatana, which is in the north of the city, and that's where I had to set up my office if I wanted to get the authorization to start a business in Thailand back then. So really, that was it. And another point. Okay, yeah, I guess I'm back. I had a anyway. Another point is that internet came in Asia even later than in Europe, and back then in 2003 there were how to say, internet connections where you had to dial a number, you know, like, and then it would connect. And the DSL was a luxury. It was really a luxury. DSL is basically anything that has enough speed so that you can actually work. And I'm not even talking about watching videos, but just, you know, downloading files or whatever. And back then, the monthly subscription fee for my DSL line in the office was more expensive than my assistant's monthly salary. It didn't last long, but in the first couple of years, it was like that. So really, at that time, virtual office was not really a possibility. Anyway, the thing is that it lasted 15 years, and within those 15 years, things have changed tremendously in the technological landscape, and I kept it a physical office in that same freaking location. Why? Why didn't I change? And I would say, well, once you have a business that's running, and you know it's running the way it is running, you know it's not perfect, but yeah, there is a risk of breaking it in changing. Of course, I mean, that's ridiculous in retrospective, because there's an even bigger risk of becoming obsolete if you don't change. But back then I was like, yeah, everybody's used to working in the office. Things are, they communicate with each other in such and such manner. Do I really want to break everything? Is my current staff really up to it? Because I know if I knew at some point that if I were to start a new company, I would make it all virtual. But with the existing staff and the existing processes and the existing this and that, I didn't really want to take the plunge. And that was silly on my part as well, because in the meantime, I had kids and I had to move to another suburb in order to be close to where my kids went to school. And really, I mean, in the last year, I had the company because there are many constructions of underground lines in Bangkok. It's a giant mess. I had literally to spend more than 3 hours a day in the car to commute forth and back, and that is absolutely dreadful. But anyway, yeah, one point. There's 2 points. One point is that some of the team, they were not really keen. They were not really skilled at interpersonal communication. Basically, at the beginning, I hired a bunch of junior programmers, and I would say those who were most capable of growing up. How to say, those who were most capable of communicating, who were most business savvy, they wouldn't stay for long. I mean, for many years, programmers in a small studio. Those who stayed programmers in a small studio for many years, despite the fact that it was not the best opportunity they could have gotten, was because they were comfortable here and they dreaded the change. And they were comfortable because I didn't ask them to communicate interpersonally too much in writing or in... basically, I don't know how they would have resented the requirements of a virtual office. The other thing is that we were basically an outsourcing studio, and I'll get to the next slide. an outsourcing studio, not for art because that would be easy, but for engineering. We had more programmers than artists most of the time in our team, and that's the kind of work that is not so easy to make work distantly. One thing is, as Chris mentioned in his presentation, you cannot know what everybody's doing at any given time. You can just measure their output. And that's fair enough. And probably he is right that it is a good form of management to do so. Like, I shouldn't care about how many hours they spend. I should care about whether they output as much as they should output. And I would say if you're an art facility, if you're an art outsourcing studio, that's easy because given a certain level of quality, you have enough data to know that such art takes in average such time to make properly, and you can see who underperforms and who overperforms, and you can measure things that way. The thing is that when you're a small engineering studio where everybody works on very many different things, there's not one project that looks like the previous project, and each project is a big learning curve, and each project is exploratory in nature, like hey, can we make it such that such mobile application will take over the splash screen in order to replace the inputting of the code, and etc. It's a lot of research of how things work technologically, and there is no way on earth that you can say, hey, this folk worked well for 1 week of work. Basically, you have to trust them. You have to rely on them telling you that they tried but they didn't succeed, or hey, this was easier than planned. And in that context, it gives you some reassurance to be able to look over their shoulder and see that they are actually trying to read some documentation or to code or to do whatever, rather than playing World of Warcraft. And I guess, well, it is possible to make a virtual office work in these circumstances, but it's just going to be harder because it relies a lot more on trust when you don't really have a metric to measure people's output. Right. Next slide. Yeah, I guess that was the slide actually that corresponded to what I just say. As a matter of fact, I mean, Chris was mentioning that at BoomZap at some point they had close to 100 or more than 100 people working distantly, and you may wonder how that works. But I think, yeah, that works when indeed you have a very clear process, because what you are making is basically instances of the same thing. In that regard, what they were doing back then is shitting out a number of hidden object puzzle adventure games. I say shitting out in that they were really similar. I mean, it's not a judgment of quality, because actually they were great. I played some of the Awakening series, but really it was like, the processes were replicable and were basically systemic, and you could really build a team that would work distantly and know among 100 person who's slacking and who's not. When you're doing a lot of small engineering projects, it's harder. What next? Yeah. Recently, I joined Zerobit. Zerobit is, or actually was until now, a brick and mortar studio with no previous experience in virtual work. And they, or now I should say we, because I'm part of Zerobit now, we were forced to work virtually because of the COVID-19 situation. And I say forced because it was not by choice. The government said that every non-essential business should stop any commuting, and we had to do that. The staff was not really ready for it. Actually, just today I had somebody ask me in a private conversation, hey, do you think this is going to last long? Because I cannot focus when I am at home. I want to be back in the office. Well, I told that person, it depends on the government. I mean, I cannot go against the government order, except when it's about drinking alcohol. So cheers. Anyway, so yeah, I have been appointed as the CEO of that company just on the day that they started working from home. So I didn't really have time to know the team before starting working from home with them. And then I had to get a number of information on who's doing what, all of that distantly by talking distantly with different members of the team, and with a language barrier because it was a company that was 100% Thai until I stepped in, and everybody talks in Thai. The documentation is in Thai, and everything has to happen in Thai language, which I speak some but moderately. So what do I do with that? Clearly, I cannot just browse all the chatting channels and see whoever is talking about whatever. I mean, I could do that, but it would take me the whole day to decipher what everybody's saying in Thai, and it would be of very little value. There would be a lot of not a lot actually, very low signal to noise ratio. So instead, I have to identify whom I am talking to. The company has about a bit less than 20 people now. I cannot talk with 20 people. I have to identify whom I'm talking to and rely on them to talk to others. So it goes against having a flat hierarchy in which everybody talks to the boss, but I guess that's how I have to manage it. Because actually, there is one producer in the company, and she's very good at what she's doing. So I found out quickly enough, like by the second day of employment, that I had to heavily rely on her. So yeah, Zero Bit actually develops and publishes and operates only one game, which is called Athenian. It's a card game on mobile, on iOS and Android. It's a bit like Hearthstone. If you ever played Hearthstone, it's similar. I mean, with some differences, of course, because there must be some selling points. But I will not go into detail because my goal here is not to sell you that specific game. Anyway, so in one team, 20% for one mobile game isn't that many. Well, actually, no, because there's artists, there's developers, there's QA, there's one game designer, there's one producer, and there's also a marketing department. I mean, basically, I mean, it calls itself marketing, but I would call that an operations department, making sure that everything is smooth, that customer requests are getting answered, etc. So in terms of activity, I would say it's not like engineering, research, and development like what I did in my previous company. It's just like more of a developer / publisher of a small game, but it requires a lot more synchronization between different departments. Like the marketing has to work closely with the art, so there is really a need for communication between people. But indeed, the good point is that it should be possible to assess the output of everybody. So yeah, right now, as I said, there's one producer, there's one art lead, and there's one marketing lead. I have to rely on those persons and only engage into talking with other people when there's a specific one-to-one matter to discuss. And the producer, I would say, is dedicated full time now that we are working virtually in making sure that everybody knows what they have to do, knows who they have to talk to, and actually works. So really, there's a strain on management, but it has to be done. We do 2 stand-up meetings a day. I mean, we call them stand-up meetings, but they're not really stand-up because we're all like this, talking on microphone from home. The morning, everybody talks and tell what they are going to do in the day. The evening, we opt for a different format where just the leads will talk and they sum up what their department have been doing. So this way, we ensure through 2 meetings, one at 10 a.m. and one at 6 p.m., that everybody is there, which is already an important point. And second, well, with the morning meeting, that everybody has a clue of what they are going to do, and if they have no clue or what they think they should do is completely wrong, then that's the opportunity to correct them. And in the evening, the leads give everybody a sense of the advancements of the advancement of the project. So the online tools that we use for that. Many tools are tools that I actually used when I was running a brick and mortar studio myself. There's Trello for task tracking. I don't know if it's the best alternative actually, but that's what we are using now, and I'm used to it because I have been using it before. Google Drive, of course, for the storage, Bitbucket for the source control. Well, that's not including all of the tools that are used for the operating the game, like PlayFab and Photon for the servers and whatnot, and Unity for the building the client and etc. Anyway, so the team communication, presently it happens on Discord. I'm not happy with it. The team was used to Discord. In fact, what happened is that the owner of the company, before I stepped in when he made arrangement for everybody to work from home, he was planning on using Google Hangout, but they informed him that they already all had a Discord room in which they were all talking informally about whatever, so they would be more comfortable using that. The problem I have with it is that it's very hermetic. It's like everybody's using nicknames, so if somebody new is in the team, they will be like, who the fuck is the Dark Knight of Eternity? Oh, that's Joe from QA. Okay, and that doesn't really work. Plus, you have to individually make friends with everyone, and it's a bit more complex to set up private rooms and etc. when it's needed. Although I would agree with Chris that the fewer private rooms you have, the better. Private rooms should be for discussing basically private and personal matters and nothing else, not project related matters. Anyway, so Discord, I have yet to see actually what to use. Probably we should look into using Slack, and that's something I would have to force onto the team against their will, because they are really happy with Discord as much as I am not. Yeah, I guess then it's about better sprint planning for everybody to plan things that are achievable in the time frame, while also requiring a decent quantity of output, so that we can say, okay, you have achieved that. It means that you have performed properly. You haven't achieved that. It means you have underperformed. Because right now it's more like, oh, you haven't achieved that. Yeah, maybe we planned wrongly, and that we have to gain accuracy in that, and indeed to better track per person achievement, and be aware of who's underperforming, who's performing better than they should, and of course reward the good performers. So that's one of the many things that I will have to look into in order to improve how the company is running. Okay, I guess that's about everything I have for now. If anybody has any question, yeah, first. Yeah. If anybody has any question, let me see for the, what's that? Yeah. Is that the right channel? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. I guess nobody has any question, right? Okay. Well, if nobody has any question, then cheers, guys. I think I am the last speaker in this evening. Well, have a good one. Have a good weekend, and thank you for watching. Bye for now. How do I stop that? Okay. Bye for now.